Is Hunter Renfrow now the heir apparent to Adam Thielen in the slot here in Carolina? And how will the wide receiver competition shake out? I'll answer those questions among other listener questions in this weekly Friday mailbag edition of Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcoming into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and yes, of course, Friday, your team every day. That's our motto here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for watching the show here on YouTube and listening wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, because on Fridays like today, I answer your weekly Friday mailbag questions all throughout the off season. All you got to do is either at me or DM me over on Twitter at Julian Council or at me over on Blue Sky at Julian Council to get your questions in for next week's edition of the weekly Friday mailbag right here on Locked On Panthers. This episode of Locked On Panthers is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox, no console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. The mailbag is back after a 1-week hiatus, as there were more pressing things going on. I had a lot of y'all who were DMing me throughout Friday and Saturday about what was going on with the draft. And I hope I answered all of those questions throughout this past week as we look back on what the Panthers did last week and in the 2025 NFL draft. And heading into next week, we're going to get to know every single one of the draft picks that they had over the weekend last week with our Getting to Know series. Going to have some guests on, so we're going to talk more about that next week. But plenty of y'all asked me questions that I really didn't get to, and they were answered pretty quickly. So hopefully, again, all that you had asked me last weekend was answered throughout the show. And if not, we'll get to it over the next couple of weeks. But let's go ahead and get into the mailbag here. And we'll start off by talking about the wide receiver position, as Fred has a question as it pertains to Hunter Renfrow, who signed on Sunday here to Carolina, saying, being that Hunter Renfrow's a good slot guy, do you think he's the Panthers' midterm replacement for Adam Thielen? This is likely Adam's last year, and Hunter is 29. He should at least factor in to be Thielen's short-term replacement after this year. Thoughts, or am I looking too far into a basic wide receiver signing? Yeah, I would think that there would be an opportunity for Hunter Renfrow, rather, to be the replacement to Adam Thielen there in the slot for Carolina. When you look back at his career with the Raiders, he got off to a really good start. His first 2 years, had 600 yards receiving both those seasons. 2021, he was a Pro Bowler. The last 2 seasons he spent there in 22 and 23, his numbers weren't that great, just over 300 yards receiving in both of those years. And I don't pay attention to what happens with the Raiders, so I don't really know what was going on there. We can certainly talk to our guy Q Myers of Locked On Raiders at some point this off season in the coming weeks to figure out what was going on there with Adam in his final time, his final couple years there with the Raiders. But we know recently what led him to not play last year was that he was dealing with a autoimmune condition, ulcerative colitis, which had him lose weight. He had fatigue, had high fevers. He had a quote from a story from Darren Gann on Panthers.com earlier this week saying, quote, last year I fluctuated in weight. I went down to 150 pounds. I had like 7 straight days of 103-degree fevers. It's tough to play when you're not feeling great. Yeah, it is tough to do anything when you have 103-degree fever for a full week straight. My God, I can't even imagine. But after spending a year consulting with doctors and getting the condition under control, he's ready to make his comeback, and he's now at 187 pounds to play at 185. So 35 pounds below his playing weight is where he was at last year dealing with that condition. So good to hear that he's back and healthy. Now, I think we have to see just how healthy he is and how up to speed he is as far as, playing at the NFL level again after you miss a year when you're dealing with something like that. And I don't know how long he's been dealing with that. That could certainly set you back as far as trying to get back into game shape, which he has plenty of time to do that as competition for that job at least as far as trying to make the roster this year, really won't start until we get to the second or third week of training camp in August. So we still have a ways to go. Hunter, rather. God, he has all this time over the next month of OTAs and a mandatory minicamp to really get up to speed. So we'll see whether that's how it plays out. But right now, I think it's a little bit too early to say that's what's going to happen, as there's still a lot of competition in that room. And speaking of the competition in that wide receiver room, Nick asking, at what point do we stop caring about knowing the system, he puts in quotes, in regards to keeping David Moore around? Dude is not a good NFL wide receiver, and there's much more talent upside with other players on the roster. Jalen Coker and Hunter Renfrow are better already, and the potential of Jimmy Horn Jr., Kobe Hudson, and Jacoby George is clearly higher than where Moore currently is. Jimmy Horn Jr. Was the 6th-round pick from Colorado, and then there's reports that they've signed Kobe Hudson and Jacoby George as undrafted free agents. Looking at Moore's last season here in Carolina, he played in 17 games, starting 5, had 32 receptions, 351 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's the most since 2020 when he was in Seattle right before coming to Carolina the first time around and not making the roster. I don't want to sit here and act as if like David Moore wasn't a contributor from last season, because he absolutely was. When Deontay Johnson didn't pan out and they traded him, when Adam Thielen missed 7 weeks, when Coker missed some time, Legette, he also had his ups and downs. David Moore was a nice addition for this team. And this is a coaching staff that obviously knows him from his time in Seattle. You look at when he was not in the league, Dave Canales gave an opportunity in 2023 down in Tampa Bay, and he did a lot more last year than I would have ever expected out of David Moore because of the injuries, but also I did not think he still had that in him, and he did show it. But you are right, there are some younger players like Jalen Coker, like Hunter Renfrow, who's already been a Pro Bowler, but Coker especially, and then some guys that they're going to bring in who are going to have an opportunity to at least compete and try to make the 53, more likely the practice squad, I would think, with guys like Hudson and Jacoby George. And I really like what George did the last couple of years at Miami last year, especially catching balls from Cam Ward. But it's not going to be easy to crack the rotation and to make the roster at wide receiver. When you look at it, Adam Thielen, Xavier Legette, Tetero McMillan, those are the only 3 guys I think that are absolutely secure as far as making the roster this upcoming season in that wide receiver room. Now, last year they did keep 7, back when Dave Canales said it was the deepest position on the roster. Eventually, once they got to the waiver wire, which they had the first waiver priority, they cut Jalen Coker and they cut Amir Smith-Marset, who had also been injured in the preseason. So he was probably not going to make it around anyways, but they cut those 2 guys, and we're down to only 5 receivers. David Moore was one of them. If they're going to keep 7 this year, again, Thielen, Legette, McMillan, they're good. I'm guessing if Renfrow is truly healthy and back to his old self, he's going to make the team. So that's 4. I feel good about Jalen Coker getting an opportunity. So that's 5. And then it comes down to, okay, if you're going to keep 7 more, then David Moore probably makes a team. Maybe Jimmy Horn Jr. makes a team. Like, I would count on those guys all making it more so than going after another undrafted player. And I understand that it worked out for Coker last year. I do not think that's going to be the norm in Carolina, that an undrafted free agent is going to make the roster every single year and come in and actually make a big impact. Like they had 2 last year. You saw Damani Richardson, you saw Jalen Coker. There was opportunity. It was the worst team in the NFL the year prior. So there were opportunities for those guys to make the team, and they did. Now, of course, Coker got cut, but then came back. Richardson stayed on the entire year. I just think as this roster gets better, it's going to make it a little bit difficult for those guys who did not get drafted to be able to make the team. So we'll see. I don't think David Moore is useless. I'm not going to sit here and confidently say that Kobe Hudson and Jacoby George are better players than him, as they have never played in the NFL. And it's damn hard to go from being a good college player to even being a player who can make an NFL roster. We see it every single year. I am excited, though, to see what the wide receiver room looks like once we finally do get to training camp and see how things shake out once we get to the initial 53. And if they do indeed keep 7 again, or if they decide to only keep 5 or 6, all that, I'm very interested to see how it plays out here in Carolina. But let's take a quick pause. I'll come back here and answer more of your weekly Friday mailbag questions right here on Locked On Panthers. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Play high-quality Xbox games at the fraction of the cost of a console. Already have a console? A Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take your or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K second gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max first and second gen, and Fire TV Cube third gen. All right, back here on Locked On Panthers, answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. Now, questions from Tyler, who is a Florida alum. And we have 3 Gators now here on the Panthers roster, 3 former Gators. And the transfer portal and all these guys playing for like 5 schools is crazy now, but not 5, obviously that. Well, there are guys who do that. There's one actually doing it right now, which is just sickening. Get a job. But Princely Umanmielen started off his career in Florida. Played there for 4 years, 1 year in Oxford. We also had Trevor Etienne get drafted here to Carolina. He started off his first 2 seasons down in Gainesville before going to Athens, which, my God. And then Cam Jackson is the other one the Panthers selected. He spent his entire career at Florida. So still possible to stay at one school for your entire college career. Actually, I believe he did. I could be wrong. But Tyler says he is a Gators alum. Hasn't missed a game in 10 years. So he has thoughts on 2 of the former Florida Gators that are now here in Carolina. And those are the 2 that transferred. Tyler saying, starting off first with Princely Umanmielen, saying that he was not a fan favorite while he was at Florida, had great get off and ability to rush the passer, but was too worried about chasing sacks than playing within the scheme. He was also known for being very active on social media, responding to fan criticisms. And even after the Ole Miss UF game this past fall, he ran up to the concourse of the stadium to confront UF fans that were taunting him. Do you think these habits these are habits that can be untaught in the NFL to make him more of an every down impact, or do you think he will just be a pass rush specialist? Well, I'll answer that question before we get to the Trevor Etienne part of it. I will say this. Look, if you guys want to talk crap about players and you want to sit there and curse at them and you're in a stadium, they can hear you within earshot. Look, if they want to go up there and beat your ass, I have no problem with that, honestly, because like sometimes people just do need to be punched in the face and learn how to conduct themselves in public. Of course, not condoning violence, but if it happens, maybe you'll learn a lesson. But yeah, you don't want to ever see that happen. Obviously, a player does not need to be doing that, and it's not an ideal situation, but there needs to be repercussions for fans who conduct themselves in that manner when they decide to go to games and think that they have a right to say where the hell they want to people because they bought a ticket. No, that's not how it works. As far as like, I'm going to talk to people about this next week. Planning on getting Brandon Olson of Locked On Gators on. I think it's Stephen Willis, who is the host of Locked On Ole Miss, going to get both perspectives. Trying to do that with all the transfers. I'm going to have Brandon on also to talk about Trevor. They got Clint Shamblin, who we out on pre-draft, to talk about Trevor Etienne when he was up there in Athens, get both perspectives of how his career played out in Gainesville, what led to the transfer, and then how things played out on their second stop. So we're going to do that for both Princely and for Trevor. We do not have a Purdue show, so cannot do that for Nick Scorton. I don't even know who covers Purdue in general. So, but look, answer your question. Like, yeah, I'm sure those are habits that can be untaught as far as playing within the scheme, not running up and yelling with fans. It just comes with maturity. He's a young college kid, and I can only imagine what Florida fans said about him on Twitter when he decided to enter the portal. And they probably said a lot of nasty things, and he didn't appreciate it. And then when they lost that game, Ole Miss did, which ended their hopes of going to the playoff. And I want to hear that Ole Miss at 9-3 should have been in the playoff after losing to that terrible Kentucky team. And then, hell, Florida was no good either for the most part last season. Yeah, so I think maturity will help all of that. As far as will he be an every down guy, it seems like right now he's just going to be a third down pass rush specialist. When you look at the roster, they don't really need him to be an every down kind of guy. When you have Clowney still around, when you brought in Nick Scorton as well, they have Pat Jones a second, they have DJ Wonnum. I don't think they're really going to be asking to do that as of now, but in a couple years, yeah, you would love to see Umanmielen be more than just a third down dude. But if he is just third down guy, kind of like the dude I was talking about, I think it was Bryce Huff up there and who was in Philly. I guess he was in New York, now he's in Philly. You get paid a lot of money to be that, so it can work out for him down the road. So we'll see. Again, I'll talk more about this next week with some of the guests that we'll have on to get a better understanding of what exactly played out during his career in Gainesville and understand more what you're talking about here, Tyler. Another question Tyler has about Trevor Etienne, saying Trevor Etienne is a huge fan favorite at UF, of course, until he transferred to Georgia, which, wow. He is so talented with the ball in his hands. He's got great vision and elusiveness. Everyone wanted him to be the bell cow rather than splitting time with Montrell Johnson. One of the main things that kept him off the field was his pass protection. Do you think this will still cost him snaps in the NFL, or will his pass catching ability and elusiveness outweigh his pass protection struggles? Well, if you cannot protect the quarterback, you cannot play the running back position. Like that's your main thing to do. Receivers, if you cannot block on the outside, you're not going to be able to get the opportunity to catch the football. Like you have to do the fundamental things. You have to do your 111 to be able to get on the field. So if he is not able to do that, he will have a tough time being able to play snaps in the NFL. Now, right now, they have Rico Dowdle. They have Chuba Hubbard, two experienced running backs. That is going to be the primary factor while he will not be playing a lot of snaps this upcoming season in all likelihood. Now, moving forward, depending on how things play out with Chuba and how things play out with Jonathan Brooks, he will have to, of course, develop as a pass blocker there in the backfield in order to be able to get on the field. And if he does that, then maybe he can have an impact. I do think that they'll try to find ways to get him out there as far as just his pass catching ability, as you mentioned there, Tyler. And if that happens, I think that's great early on. Like, I don't think that any of the guys, for the most part, other than Ted McMillan that they drafted, maybe Nick Scorton, were guys they were bringing in to come in and have to play like every single down and be like major contributors for them this upcoming season. They were getting depth pieces, and that's what Princely Umanmielen is right now. If his role is a third down pass rusher, so be it. I don't think they really need him to be more than that right now, considering just how bad the pass rush was and what they already have on the roster and the roles that they would want him and other guys to fill. Same thing here with Trevor Etienne. Like, they don't really need him to go out there and to be the bell cow because they already have Chuba. They already have Rico, and they probably don't need him to be a pass blocker. It would be nice if he can go out there and do that, and he'll have to do it if they have garbage time and he plays late in those games, but they would really need him to be more of a guy who can help them out in special teams and maybe as a third down back out of the backfield. Other than that, these are things I think just that will take time. So I wouldn't be uber concerned about him at this point in time. We'll see how things play out, but I do appreciate the perspective, Tyler, on both of these former Florida Gators. All right, take one more quick pause, come back here, and answer the rest of your weekly Friday mailbag questions here on Locked On Panthers. All right, two more questions here on this weekly Friday mailbag edition of the show. Coming over now, Addison, who hit me up and said, do you think Jimmy Horn Jr. will primarily be a special teams player? Or do you see him taking Thielen's spot when he retires? Also, do you think Lathan Ransom has started potential? Starting out with Jimmy Horn Jr. as a 6th-round pick and looking at what the wide receiver room looks like right now, he is going to have to make the team, I think, based off of special teams. And he has been a returner in his career, and I would think that the Panthers will give him an opportunity to be a returner, and he'd be fighting for a spot with David Moore, with Raheem Blackshear as well. I think Trevor Etienne would probably factor in as a guy in the return game. And I do think he gives them some ability there, especially offensively. As a speed guy, which they don't have a ton of speed. You look at Xavier Legette, of course, has speed, and outside of that, I haven't really seen a ton of it, and a lot of yards after the catch the last couple of years. So I think that could be where he could factor in. Now, as far as taking over Adam Thielen's spot, again, comes down to like Hunter Renfrow. What's his health? He's going to be 30 next year, so that is getting a little bit older in the NFL, of course. Now, maybe missing out a year, and then just how things have played out recently, maybe that allows him to play a little longer. I don't really know. Still TBD on how Renfrow looks once he actually is out there on the field. And they have true competition going on in August. So it's possible, but just kind of wait and see. Ransom, like, yeah, he probably does have story potential just based off of all that I've read about him. And we'll talk to the Locked On Buckeyes host next week. Already have that interview scheduled. We'll talk more about just what his thoughts are on what he was able to do up there in Columbus. But he has the potential mainly because right now you look at the roster, there's only like 4 guys. And there's a couple of these that they've said apparently they've reportedly gone out there and signed the safety position. But yeah, maybe we'll see. I do think eventually, like when you take a guy in the 4th round and the guy who's had as many snaps played and brings kind of physicality that he does, that eventually like you want to get him out there on the field. So I do think that down the line, that will be the case. Maybe as early as this season, that will be the case for Lathan Ransom from Ohio State. Final question now coming over from Mike saying, I'm wondering if the Panthers should entertain a trade with Miami for Jalen Ramsey. He's familiar with our DC. The Panthers need a corner and didn't draft one and would help bolster our secondary as well and enhance JC's development. Yeah, I'm kind of good here. I'm good. Jalen Ramsey is a guy who I think at this stage in his career is making sure he's going to go to like a surefire contender. And I'm not trying to say the Panthers aren't going to be a contender, but there still are plenty of questions like the defense, which, yes, this would help the secondary. There's still questions up front of whether they will truly be better and the additions that they made are going to pan out offensively. We got to continue to see what Bryce can do and see if some of these young receivers can step up and really play the roles that they need them to play. So, I don't know if it's like a surefire thing like Miami. You can't say that they are. They have been a playoff team, and when Tua has been healthy, which he wasn't last year because of the concussion concerns, they've been a playoff team. So we'll see how that plays out with his trade market. I just don't really look at that as being a thing that Carolina needs to be focused on. They've already paid J.C. Horn a ton of money. They got Mike Jackson coming back. They obviously like him. They got guys like Caleb Evans and Shamar Bartholomew, who they also like as outside corners. Of course, Shaw Smith-Way coming back for a second year. I just look at it as being unnecessary. Like, this is not a guy that I feel like they need to add to the roster. And yeah, Jalen Ramsey's good. Totally understand that. You're already paying top corner money for one player, and you got another guy who fits in pretty nicely to the culture that you have here, and you rewarded him. So what does that say to Mike Jackson? That, hey, Mike, we like you. We're going to give you this money, but then we're going to trade for Jalen Ramsey later this offseason. Jalen Ramsey is known to, be a colorful character on and off the field. So no, I'm good there. You should always, of course, call and just see what it's going to cost. And it probably wouldn't cost that much, but I think that they're fine with the 2 starters that they have right now. I think not fine, good. They're good with the 2 starters that they have right now here at corner. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all, subscribe or follow the show free over on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, over on Twitter and Blue Sky at Julian Council, where I'll be back answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions here on the show. So either at me or DM me on Twitter or at me on Blue Sky to get those in for next week. In the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding, and I'll talk to y'all on Monday.